DC has their Dark Side Wars. Marvel has the Secret Wars and Clone Wars. And there's probably an X-Men war and a Venom war. And Marvel has a ton of wars. But here at Unbuckled Comics, we have the Captain Wars. Yo, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to Unbuckled Comics, where we read and review comics just for you. I'm your host, Unbuckled Cape, and today we're looking at Superman Arkham Asylum with our sidekick, Captain N. But before we get to all that, I'd like to let you know there is a Facebook and Instagram page of the same name, Unbuckled Comics, where you can keep up with upcoming episodes, add comments to episodes, or even DM me. And then next month, we are starting our Patreon. I believe I have decided that the Patreon tier we're going to have one tier, and it's going to be $3, and we're going to see how that goes and take the feedback and stuff, but I haven't had quite enough time to finalize everything. That's just the general thought process. If you do sign up for Patreon, you are going to be able to have access to our Unbuckled Comics Discord. We are going to have some polls for episodes. I just ran one recently for the people that are in the Discord, and we had 4 comics. It was 007, Godzilla, Complete Rulers of the Earth, the current running on Deadpool, and our 4th one was, I believe it was the first volume of Frank Miller's run on Daredevil. I believe that's what it was. Godzilla and 007 came in as a tie. They each had 6 votes. So I'm planning the poll episode to come out in November, and because November has my favorite holiday, which is Thanksgiving, I decided that I'm going to be giving you guys both Godzilla and 007 in November. So since there was a tie, you get both. I don't know if that's going to happen every time we have a tie, but it's going to happen this time. Also, Patreon perks that I'll have, our bonus episodes, which are the solicitation episodes that you got 2 weeks ago, and then 2 weeks from now, everyone is going to get our review of Spider-Man the Animated Series. I will be joined by Captain Alcatraz on that. Everyone's going to get that, but then from there on out, the Unbuckled and Unscripteds are going to be Patreon exclusives. I'm also going to do some other stuff for Patreon, some bonus videos and things, like I do the Reels on Instagram. I'm going to try to do more videos and stuff like that. And then we also play a game in Discord called Capes Detectives, where I will post a picture on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday relating to a specific character, and everyone tries to guess what the character is. Since our last episode, we have had 2 winners. The first one was Big Kid. He was able to guess Lobo, the main man, from a very digitized rendition of Lobo's Space Hog. It was the first picture posted, so congratulations, Big Kid. And then because Big Kid won, he got to pick the next character, and he chose Shocker, and very, very fittingly, Captain Alcatraz was able to guess the Shocker from a picture of his gauntlet. I think I pulled the picture from probably one of the Spider-Man video games, because the gauntlet was like massive on him, and I cropped it as tight as I could, but there was a little bit of like that fishnet style insulated suit that he was wearing, and Captain Alcatraz, he's got an eye for the Shocker. So next week we will be taking a look at the mystery character that Captain Alcatraz has given us. So that is, I think, all the updates I have for you guys so far. Congratulations to Big Kid and Captain Alcatraz for winning Capes Detectives. One more thing that I'd like to, well, I guess not. I got 2 more things. this past weekend, I have gone to Wellsboro Comic Con. I had a fantastic time. For those of you that are in my Discord, I had expressed a couple of times that I was having a difficult week, mainly just with work. It was rough. Just one of those weeks where stuff doesn't go right and you're behind, you can't catch up. Wellsboro Comic Con was exactly what I needed. I had a fantastic time. So I'm going to be sending some pictures and stuff and posting some things on my Instagram here over the next couple of days. I'm hoping to get to some of it as soon as I get these recordings that I got to get done, recorded, edited, and sent out for scheduling to be posted. Just what a cool community. If you have never gone to a Comic-Con, I highly suggest finding a small one, preferably local to you, so you're not traveling a ton. Jeez, my words today. The comic community is so cool, and I'm not even going to get into it because I'm going to ramble, and I think our episode with Captain N is a little bit lengthier than what I typically try to do. So just know that I am going to have a Patreon episode here at some point. I don't know if I'm going to release it in August yet before I start Patreon episodes, but I'm going to have another Unbuckled and Unscripted episode where I just talk about Comic-Con, the Wellsboro one specifically, and go over that and tell some stories from there. It was a great time. Now, back to that little cold opening that I gave you guys. Yes, Unbuckled Comics have the Captain Wars, and part 1 of the Captain Wars is going to start today with Captain N soaring in from the up north Canada. And then in 2 weeks, we will get an episode with Captain Alcatraz, who is sailing across that big pond that separates us. And we are going to let these two captains duke it out to see who reigns supreme. Really, we're just going to have an episode with Captain N and then a completely separate episode with Captain Alcatraz. But it sounds good that we're going to pit them together, even though I know if we actually tried to pit these two together, they'd probably just find a pub somewhere and give each other googly eyes, and maybe they would fight over that last pint of beer. Maybe that's how we get them to battle. But without further delay, guys, let's get into it. This week's sidekick is phoning in from way up north. He's a Discord mod everywhere I go. He is the only Twitch streamer I'll drop what I'm doing to view. He's guest appeared on multiple video game podcasts. Captain, always the guest, never the host. And how are you, my friend?
I'm doing good, Unbuckled. How are you?
Good. I'm excited to hang out with you and talk a little bit here.
Oh, I'm super excited for this. This is one of my favorite stories ever.
Yeah, you told me. So before we get going, give you a chance to just kind of plug yourself. What have you been up to? What are you doing?
Well, I've kind of just I'm in between jobs right now. I left my last career there and just kind of been sitting around for the last couple of weeks, so nothing big on that front. I've been trying to get back into Twitch streaming, but it's not been a successful adventure yet, and I think that's mostly because the Tears of the Kingdom has been occupying a lot of my time. Like you said, I've had a chance to guest appear on a couple of podcasts over the last few months there, so that's been really good for me, and it's really helped me be able to speak on microphone instead of face to face with somebody, which is where I was really used to talking. Other than that, just reading comic books and happy to be here tonight.
Yeah. On the topic of you being a guest on podcasts, we kind of got to talking one time, and when I started this podcast, you were one of my my first and probably still one of my biggest advocates. Anytime I drop by Twitch, you promote my show. So having you on here is a huge honor for me, just because I get to return a little bit of the favor that's owed to you for everything that you've done for me, helping with me with my Discord setup and being a model on there. And the suggestions and helping me, tune up my show from the early days of episode 1 all the way through now, which, when this airs, we will be just shy of 2 months away from having a year of this show. So, huge thanks to you, and I am very excited about having you on.
Well, thanks. And to be honest, it's been kind of fun talking to you, and I've learned a lot from you, and I hope you learned a lot from me. And it's been a back and forth relationship, and I hope it's been as mutual to you as it has to me. And fixing your Discord, mostly that's just to mess around with Mr. Pickle there.
Yeah, it's worth it just for that itself, eh? Um, well, I'm sure we could go back and kiss each other's butts back and forth, but I know better than to try to outpolite a Canadian. So, we're just gonna move on, and I need to ask. I opened up the suggestions for comics that people wanted me to see read, and I think you were like the second or third one that jumped in, and you suggested Superman Arkham, and it is a
Yeah.
story that I've never heard of.
Um, this is back in my heyday of comic collecting. Like basically, this is where I was getting the weekly stack of comics, and it costing me $200 a week just to keep up the collection. And this is just part of the regular Superman rotation, which always went Superman, Adventures Superman, Superman, the Man of Steel, then Action Comics, and then it would repeat that cycle the next month. So when I first started reading this story, it was so bizarre. It kind of just took me away, and I really got into it, comic after comic. And over the years, this is the one I've gone back to read the most. I actually have a box for my favorite comic series, and this one sits in the front of it, so I can go back to it whenever I want. It's just
Really?
a really fantastic story.
All right. So you gave me your heavy hitter right away then.
Oh yeah, I'm not going to come to unbuckled with some soft ass story. Excuse my language.
It's all right, no problem. Um, well, speaking of big heavy hitters, taking a look at some of the names that worked on this book. The artist is Ed McGuinness, probably most notable for his Superman and his Batman animated style. He's also did Spider-Man and Deadpool, which is a series that I read the first 2 books in and really, really loved. He did Deadpool. Then we also had Mike Miller that was on this as an artist. He worked on the Injustice comics and a ton of X-Men as well as Green Lantern. For writers, Joe Kelly, who did a lot of JLA between 2001, excuse me, and 2004, also working on X-Men, Daredevil. Daredevil, he actually had a hand in from 64 all the way up to 98, so a lot of Daredevil and a lot of Deadpool. And then probably the most notable name, especially for me, is Jeff Loeb. He worked on Daredevil Yellow, which we did an episode. I think it would be about 2 months prior to this episode. Worked on Superman, Batman Hush, Long Halloween, Dark Victory, Superman for All Seasons, which is one that I need to pick up. Basically, you could name a character in Marvel and DC, and he's probably worked on them. And that alone made me very excited to read this comic. So you at least got Ed McGuinness and Jeff Loeb in here to start me off.
Yeah, and they were the regular writers for the Superman of the 4 comics of the month. They all generally wrote the Superman comics for quite a while there.
Yeah. So this I like you mentioned, you have the single issues. I have the trade, and we are going to be looking at 9 issues today.
Yeah.
So um if you would have not have told me previously what was going on in this, and we're gonna keep it a secret until we get to that point in the story. um I would have been so lost. Just to kind of set up kind of like world building. In issue 1, you learn that everything is opposite, right? Villains are running Arkham. Solomon Grundy is the warden. LexCorp is actually not LexCorp, it's Lane Corp. So Lois Lane is basically Lex Luthor. Superman is in Arkham for murder of said Lex Luthor, who in this world is a nobody, and Bizarro am not Justice League leader, which actually makes me extremely happy.
Yeah, it was Bizarro is a great character when it comes to Superman comics. Like the hard to read sometimes, but really fun.
Yeah, yeah, and I um don't have a ton of Superman, and this is the first comic that I have that features Bizarro, but I absolutely loved him in Superman the animated series, Justice League, and then Justice League Unlimited. Every episode that he in, it's a joy just because of like you said, it's hard to read but fun to listen to. His reverse way of talking.
It gives you a workout. You really have to think of the opposite of what he's saying.
Yeah. So everything is topsy turvy in this world. And you were given no explanation as to why. And Superman even kind of has a little bit of like amnesia where he doesn't even really know who he is. And I want to know from you, like you said, you were reading these comics after comics after comics. You kind of had like a down pat, like, okay, this Superman story is going to kind of start this way. Like you didn't they were probably all pretty similar, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And then you jump into this one and it is just it's Bizarro world basically.
Yeah, and the last comic didn't really hint that this was going to happen. I mean, uh, the last Superman 159, as this one we're talking about is 160, was green featured the Green Lantern, and then all of a sudden, just out of the blue, the comic starts with Superman locked up in Arkham Asylum, and just no explanation as to why. And then it takes off with him escaping, and then the story just really doesn't explain a lot in book one. It's just setting everything up to kind of build the world, and then you get a little bit of Bizarro versus Superman, how Bizarro every night, or sorry, Superman escapes every night, and Bizarro always brings him back to Arkham. And then it gives, by the end of the book, it gives you a little bit of a hint of what's causing this. And I'll
Right.
let you explain that.
So that's perfect. My last note for issue one was we get Mixel shows up briefly. Do you want to attempt his full name?
Amistoplex.
Yeah, that name. I struggle weekly with names of creators and artists. I'm not dumb enough to try that one.
Oh, that one was on the Superman cartoon back in the 90s or 2000s.
Yep, late 90s, early 2000s. Again, any episode with him in was a great episode. I love this character. For those of you that don't know, he is a being of the fifth dimension. So he has all kinds of mystical powers. And he also, if you watch, or no, I guess he wasn't in any of those. I'm trying to think of what the Batmite was in. I know he's in the comics, but I'm
I
not
can't
sure of what
remember.
show. But if you've ever seen Batmite, Batmite is also a being of the fifth dimension. And then in the Teen Titans cartoon, Teen Titans, not Teen Titans Go, there was a he called himself Robin too, but there was like a Robin version of him as well in that show. He had one episode. I kind of forget what name he ended up having, but so being of the fifth dimension, and basically in the cartoon, he showed up once a year, and it was basically just to make Superman's life miserable.
Yeah,
And it was like wild things like turning airplanes into dragons and just off the wall stuff.
yeah, and that's the charm of his characters. It's just to mess with Superman, but not be do anything overly dangerous. And the way Superman always has to get rid of him is to get him to say his name backwards, which for you unbuckled might be hard if you can't get his name forward first.
Right. Yep. Yep. So seeing him at the end of issue one, you kind of get the idea of, you know, what's going on. But I think the end of issue one, he gets hit by a train and disappears, right? Is that the one with
Yeah,
the train?
he's only in it for like two or three panels there, and he just shows up, and then boom, train takes him out just like that, and then that's the end of him for the rest of the issue.
Right. So more questions than answers there.
Yeah,
Moving on to issue two, it actually starts off with him, and it becomes clear that he's trying to get to Superman, but can't because he's continually having these Looney Tune-esque accidents, buildings dropping on him, anvils, and a lot of it.
Yeah, and it's funny how like it also kind of hints at what's coming up, but it doesn't really explain it. It's just he's basically getting hit, like you said, in a Looney Tune-esque way, but he dies every time, and then he comes back because he is the imp, and he does have the power to like not die and bring himself back. That's why he keeps coming back issue after issue.
Right. And again, if I wouldn't have known going into this, I would have been so lost, even at the beginning of issue two, because then Superman again is on another attempt to escape Arkham, and he just kind of instinctively ends up at Lane Corp. Remember, it's Lane Corp, not LexCorp, and Lois Lane ends up helping capture Superman. But there's kind of a hint to what's going on. They inside of their interaction, they both feel a weird attraction to each other, but neither of them know why. Like Superman didn't go to Lane Corp thinking Lane and then having that correlation of Lois Lane. He went to Lane Corp because that's just where he ended up.
Yeah, it's where Bizarro punched him into.
Is that how it was?
Yeah.
So they just end up there, and Superman and Lois Lane kind of have this weird connection, but neither of them really know what's going on. Um, and that's brief lived, and it moves on to an appearance by this quote unquote world's Flash, who is actually
The
Flab Man.
Flab.
It is a fat version of the Flash, and then Jimmy Olsen, who is actually Bizarro's worst enemy, which in Bizarro talk means his best friend.
Yeah. And he's
He
Gravedigger Boy.
Yep, he is Gravedigger Boy. And at the end of this, you actually turns into a giant turtle man and eats Superman.
Yeah, with Jimmy Olsen, also in book one, there was a kind of neat little kind of an Easter egg there as he's shown at the grave as Bizarro flies over. You look at the gravestones and you get the Huntress, Nightwing, and Robin in the graveyard.
Oh, I completely forgot about that. I didn't have that in my notes, but I remember. I do remember that. Yeah, good catch.
Yeah, it's a little hint that, Batman's not around anymore.
Yeah, right, right. Which, by the way, Batman's nowhere to be seen.
Yeah, it was kind of that's another thing what made it interesting. I get it's a Superman story, but they are in Arkham. Like, where is Batman? Obviously, without Batman there, like Batman would have solved the problem in 20 minutes, but without him there, Superman has to figure this out for himself.
Right. And at the end of issue two, reading my last note, I have two words: very weird. I mean, the whole
Yeah,
thing is just very, very weird. It's interesting, but again, I think if I would have picked this up myself two issues in, I would have just been like, this is so strange. What's going on?
but it kept you interested at least. At least
Oh yeah,
hopefully it
yeah.
did.
It's doing its job. There's no way like reading this you would have been lost, and at the end of issue two, again, more questions than answers. But there's no like sometimes you get there and there's a little bit of frustration like I need to know what's happening, you're losing my attention span, and this is one of those page turner comics where you're like, okay, give me issue three. I don't know how you would have done it back in the day, having to wait month
A
to month.
stack of other comics to keep me occupied.
Yeah, I can't do that. I'm so glad that there are trades and that they come out as quick as they do. One of the big reasons why I waited on the last Ronin was because I knew there was no way I was going to be able to contain myself for a month.
Yeah, all I remember about this is that I kind of ran in on release date to get the book, and then it was top of the pile every time I got home.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure. So issue three, uh, not quite a spoiler, but it's still really weird. But at the beginning of issue three, it does end up going somewhere with the introduction of Steel. So Superman gets thrown in like a kind of a max security part of Arkham,
Well, he's in a
and
UFO on the SS Arkham floating above Gotham.
yeah. So I wanted to ask you about that. I didn't catch it. Is all of Arkham on that, or was this a separate part of Arkham?
I think they mentioned that this was the part of Arkham for the truly criminally insane that shouldn't be with the regular population.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought it was. So, and remember, this is a topsy turvy world. What they consider the truly criminally insane is anyone that has any kind of scientific thinking or
Yeah,
rational
and
thinking.
that's pretty much John Henry Irons to a T. Is he's very smart.
Right, right, and again, another great character. I do have the whole run of the death of Superman all the way up through the return of Superman, and that's kind of his origin story is hidden in there. I love the character, and I actually just started pulling his most recent mini limited series that I can't wait to get into. I love the character of Steel.
Yeah, he's a good character. Kind of Superman without really being a Superman. It shows that intelligence, once again, is the most important attribute.
Right, right. So he's a criminal, and again, kind of the same thing with Superman and Lois. Superman knows that he has some for connection with him, but they don't really know what's going on.
And it was the math that kind of tipped Superman off there, kind of jogged his memory a little bit because Steele was doing math formulas in his head or mumbling them out. And then Superman recognized one and he kind of gave the same answer and he put two and two together and basically said, well, if we both know this, we can't be crazy.
Right, right. It was again more of that rational thinking where Superman previously was trying to punch his way out of Arkham, and he was actually kind of starting to break down a little bit, thinking like believing the story that he was being told. He's a criminal, he's insane, he needs help, and was starting to believe that until he runs into Steel, and they both notice like you said, he's able to answer this equation that Steel is kind of rambling off in a psychotic rambling, and they make this connection, and okay, we're not crazy, there's something wrong going on here.
Yeah. And it's starting to open up the story a little bit at this point.
um and then there's also another mystery pops up because they can't, 3 out of 9 issues, you can't give away too many answers without at least replacing them with another question. There is a ominous scream that happens every night that everybody hears.
Yeah.
Just
Broadcast it on radio, TVs, just everybody gets to hear it.
Yeah. So I don't want to spend too much time on that, but it
No.
is worth mentioning that it happens in issue 3. Um, and again, I really wish I could have read this without knowing, because I had a pretty good idea of what it was.
Yeah.
Um,
And
so
this
I
book,
I I need to ask you, did you have any idea?
I'm not 100% at this point. I kind of had an inkling, but by the end of this book, they really they kind of hinted at it. And I mean, it's only one more book you really have to make the big reveal. And it was basically when Mistoplex was about to get hit by a train and he survived that I kind of had this aha moment and I kind of saw what was coming and everything just I had my theories, but I didn't have an answer yet. And
What was
like he's
what what was one of your wrong theories?
oh Jesus, my wrong theory was it the Batman was the actual. It was inside the mind of Batman, and that was
Oh.
completely off base because he's not sane. He's as crazy as the what's that guy's name, the Joker. But it's just I don't know. It's just with Mistoplex Superman, it being an Arkham. I just thought this was somehow Superman got inside of Batman's head.
I totally could see that though. The only thing is like there was too many Superman based villains. Like Bizarro being the head of the JLA, I don't know why that would have been a Batman inside of Batman's
Yeah,
head.
I chalk that up to it being part of the Superman run.
Yeah, right. Um, so anyway, moving on to issue 4. This one had quite a bit of comedy gold to start off. We get to see the Guardian and Superboy, and they are running a restaurant, fast food restaurant called Super Burgers. Guardian is the manager, and Superboy is the mascot that stands out in front and
A burger costume.
in a burger costume. Um, and then we get to see this again, quote unquote, world's villains, which are actually the heroes, and they're just about as wonky as what Flabman was. Aquaman is half fish, half man, and the upper part is fish. Wonder Woman is a basically stay-at-home, happy homemaker type woman that I I don't know. Do they really say what her crimes were?
Um, Not really, but yeah, she's like basically a throwback to a 1950s stereotypical housewife.
Yeah, and then trying to think of who else was in there.
The yellow lantern, yellow paper lantern.
Oh, that's right.
He had the power of silhouettes. Plastic card man who was basically a debit card,
Yep, Plastic Card Man.
and I can't think of the others.
I think that might have been it. I know it wasn't the whole JLA was in there, but yeah, so pretty goofy. Um and again, so Superman is breaking out of Arkham with irons, and they end up going to a statue, right?
Yeah, and that kind of is where Irons gets his super suit back because for some reason the statue was erected of his super suit and it was left as a monument to crime or something. Like I never understood why it was a statue in the middle of a park.
Okay, you beat me to my question. Why was it even there?
Yeah, sorry, it's been the part of the book that has kind of confused me, but I guess it just kind of set up a situation where they're out in the open. I have no idea where they're going with that one.
Yeah. So, but really, it kind of sparks again another like unlocked a hidden memory in both Superman and Steel. Steel gets his suit back. They do more battling, and they end up back with Lois Lane, who kind of agrees to help them, and she helps them get to the moon.
Yeah, and that's basically she tells them that everything they need to know is up on the JLA headquarters on the moon.
Right. And I don't know if I remember correctly, but how does she know that?
Um, oh geez, really testing my knowledge on this one. How
Well,
did she know? Was it her or was it Mistaplex that ended up talking to Superman? It was one of them. It was I think
oh,
Superman. Yeah,
you're
sorry.
you're right. You're
Mistaplex
right.
finally got to Superman.
You're right. It was Mistleplex that ends up telling them.
Yeah,
He tells them, and they get Lois Lane to help them get to the moon.
yeah, and yeah, that's where the connection is. Yeah, Mistaplex has the knowledge. Lois Lane has the tech.
Right. Did you notice something between issues 1 through 3 with Mixelplix that was different in issue 4?
Um, yeah, he started changing his form a little bit. Like,
Which again, I'm not quite sure what the deal with that was.
well, the way he was dying, like his in book 1, 2, and 3, he's very cartoony, and he keeps dying in these very cartoony sorts of ways. Then in book 4 is kind of where he gets, you know, back into the story. As he gets, as they get closer to the JLA tower, he gets closer to his part of the story. So,
Okay. So is that what it is that is it like a notion that he's regaining some of his powers?
well, without the ruining your big reveal here, yeah, it's he's been locked away in the JLA tower, and as he gets closer, he gets kind of closer to the powers that were locked away from him.
Okay. So I wanted to hear what you thought because you've read this a lot and I've read this once. So I took it as the Mixoplex in the first 3 issues was actually more of just a extension of his being, not really him. And the way he was drawn is the exact way he was drawn in Superman the animated series. And then once they get to the moon and see the actual Mixoplex, um, it's the way that he was drawn in the comics, the orange and purple kind of outfit that he has, as opposed to the green green suit tuxedo with the top hat.
Yeah, and you make a lot of sense when you say that. And I kind of just figured it was him getting closer to his essence. I guess would be the word I'm looking for.
Yeah. So again, one of the things that they never really explain, but it really becomes irrelevant.
Yeah, and by the next book, I've already forgotten about it.
Right, because at the end of issue 4, we now have a clear idea of what in God's name is going on. Because as they are on the moon, they turn to face the world, and the world is not round; it is square. And on each square is one continent, and the continent is in the shape of the Joker's face.
And that was the big reveal: is the entire thing was inside the mind of the Joker, and that's kind of why I waffled a bit there on the whole Batman conversation.
Yeah,
Uh,
right.
but no, like that moment was mind blowing because you see that at the end of the comic, and then it's like, where are they taking this now? And then you get the next book, which is a special edition. It's Emperor Joker #1.
And it starts off with the backstory that you're talking about, with Mixel explaining that he really wanted to get Superman's goat. So he decided to give a teeny tiny bit of his power to the Joker. And it's hilarious because how many comics or animated movies or movies do we see other villains aligning themselves with the Joker, and it just never works out.
Yeah, you think they'd learn.
So they don't, and it makes so much sense for the character of Mixel that he would do this and it would not work out for him. A lot of his schemes end up do kind of turning on him. So complete and total sense.
Yeah, and Joker tricks him, takes 99.9% of his power, is completely insane, reshapes the entire reality into his own twisted mind, and it just it explains everything from the first few books. Like, how can Superman be locked up every night? Basically, how can Mistoplex always be killed? Like, why everything in the world is just so upside down backwards. And it was great to finally get that reveal. It was
Yeah.
one of those months, months that have 5 weeks there, so you don't expect the Superman comic to come out for 2 weeks there, and then I show up and there's that Emperor Joker, and I was like, oh shit! Again, excuse my language.
Nope, you're good. You're good. The in back to the actual issue of issue 5, we spend a lot of time talking about the origin of the original JLA, and you and I kind of went over all of them, and the weird stuff that they have where like Aquaman is terrified of water, and I have here in my notes, we did miss one. Martian Manhunter
Right.
is actually
Marvin the Martian from Looney Tunes.
yep, they call him Marvin Marsh.
Yeah. That was a great homage. I've seen people make that connection before, but it was great to see it in a comic.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And he even talks like his dialogue matches Marvin's.
Oh yeah. It
He
was,
at one point he says, "Where's the big kaboom or the earth shattering kaboom?"
yeah, yeah. I think there's a couple of little references in these comics to other forms of media. I just can't think of them off the top of my head. I meant to write them down, but
I
maybe
might
they'll.
have some of them jotted down in my notes here as well, but that all makes complete and total sense. Is now Joker is a being of the fifth dimension and has all these powers. Some variation of fourth wall breaks is just flat out good storytelling.
Yeah, and it even goes on to kind of explain like Darkseid is talking to the quintessence there. It's a word I can't say. The quintessence, uh, and trying to get the anti-life equation that the Joker has stole, but the quintessence has already been taken over by the Joker, and then at that moment he takes over Darkseid, which basically shows him as literally the most powerful being in existence at this point because he's just literally taken over every powerful being.
Right. Um, so you call him Dark Seed.
Dark Side, Darkseid, yeah.
I've
It's
I've
because I'm
always
reading,
wondered because it's spelled Dark Seed.
yeah, and it's Dark Side. If you watch any Batman's or Superman shows or movies where he's in it, it just I'm looking at it written and I'm pronouncing it phonetically.
Yeah. Um, I think you're actually the first person I've heard pronounce it Dark Seed. But anyway, you're right. Joker basically is going around and absorbing every powerful being that he can to make sure that he is the yeah. So like it's not a like he really is the end all be all, the almighty of this universe that he created. He's essentially God.
Yeah, and the worry is that he'll break into the multiverse and take that over as well because he's got every power that Mistaplex has, which means he can cross the multiverse.
Right. So this issue in particular um, basically lays out everything that we need to know, what's happening, what's going on, and it is pretty dialogue heavy.
Yeah, and it also lets us know it happened with some of the missing characters like Lex Luthor, who's his little puppet or his jester.
Right. Oh, that's right. We actually get to see Emperor Joker in his court, and he has Harley, who is his
Babe in waiting.
babe in waiting. I was gonna say chick, but I was like, no, I don't think it's chick. It's his babe in waiting, and then he has Luther the Jester, um, and then of course like his JLA, which the JLA of this world stands for Joker. It's a
The
Joker League.
Joker League of Anarchy.
Is that what it is? Joker League of
Yeah.
Anarchy. Um, so yeah, so we get to see all of them in basically his big court. And the end of this issue, I think, does a really great job of showing who Superman is at his core. Because as they're discussing this, like all hope seems lost, and not to Superman. He's reassuring everyone that they are going to get through this.
Yeah, and I'm gonna pull you back here a little bit. There's actually another interesting point about this series. In the Joker League of Anarchy, you see Ignition, who actually appeared, I think, one or two books before, and this is his first appearance inside of DC completely. This is where he started his origin story.
Oh,
And
I didn't know
yeah,
that.
and yeah, so I don't know if you've ever seen him again. Like, I honestly never heard of this character after this book. So yeah,
I didn't either, but I just kind of figured that it was someone that was tied into the Superman lore that I didn't know about.
yeah, and it's explained or hinted on throughout the book is that Joker doesn't know where he came from, and he can't read his mind like he can read everybody else's mind. So
Right.
it never fully explains that, which is why I have a feeling that somewhere in the future they kind of added to it. But yeah, it's just I thought it was an interesting point to bring up that this is actually the origin of one of the villains.
Oh, okay. And actually in a later issue it touches that on a little bit harder.
Yeah.
The whole Joker not knowing what he's thinking, but he can read everyone else's mind. Um, but moving on to um, moving on to issue 6, we have the three super people: Superman, Supergirl, and Superboy, along with Steel and Lois Lane, and they basically are walking into a madhouse.
Yeah. And now that we've determined like where we are, this is the beginning of the story of how it ends. And basically, they don't have to pull punches anymore because the Joker's the Emperor. So things get a lot crazier from this point on.
And that's the next point I have is 1 through 5. I'm going to say that they were paced good enough, but boy, once 6 comes, it's all over the place. There's
Yeah.
battles. There is some quote unquote deaths, or as dead as what people can be in this world, and maybe a little bit of betrayal being seeded in, and then again another hint about where the heck is Batman.
Yeah. And at this point, Superman and his ragtag band of memory forgotten people are trying to get to the Joker, and it backfires on them, so to speak, as they try to get into what Joker calls the fortress of the Hacienda.
Yep, I love that, the hacienda. I actually think that was used in Batman the Animated Series, but don't quote me on that.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt it.
I'm pretty sure Harley Quinn calls their hideout their hacienda at one point. But anyway, um, uh, it's it's this goes back to Jeff Loeb being one of the all-time greats of comics. I don't care who you are, he's got to be in your top 5, right?
Yeah.
The way he's able to write an interesting story that's as topsy-turvy as it is, while maintaining some form of getting some other media in there, like the Marvin Martian, and I'm positive Haha Sienda was used in animated series,
Oh,
and
no doubt.
then speeding up the pace to this book to give it that chaos. It's not the climactic battle. It's like the first real battle that they have, and it's goes from being really weird and kind of slow paced to intense, and like it's go time now.
Yeah, and this book just ends off so spectacularly that it kind of changed the way that I was looking at the whole story.
Hmm. What do you
Not
mean?
well, well, I'm going to ruin the end of the book for you here. But
Oh,
this is where we figure out where Batman is. And
okay.
yeah, so if you want to explain it before I do, you go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I was kind of partly undecided, but what I wanted to I so my suspicions about the scream at night were right.
Yeah.
The screaming that is broadcast everywhere is Batman being tortured to death every night, and amongst the battling between the Joker League and Batman's ragtag band, Superman ends up at the GCPD front door where Batman is strung up and dead.
And
So
yeah,
the
and
end
it
of the
just shocks the crap out of Superman.
right, and he actually ends up, he's trying to stop this maniac, but finds the time to bury Batman. I at the time of reading it, I'm like, it didn't quite make sense, but it actually makes total sense that Superman would stop everything that he's doing, as important as it is, to bury his close friend and someone that is so important to him and his world. When you look at it on a deeper level, him taking that time to bury Batman out of respect is actually, again, uh, a big way that this book kind of solidifies the character that is Superman from issues um 5 on, it's really just every issue has like a major point of like this is who Superman is.
Yeah, and the best part about this for me is when I was reading it, it kind of gave me a sense that maybe Batman is not going to be part of this story. Maybe he'll come back at the conclusion of it when everything's fixed. But at
Yeah,
one point, I actually had this. Well, if you're burying him, obviously he's not going to be coming back. And at this point, you don't know that he's not actually dead because the beginning of the next book picks up right where this left off.
yeah, right. And I had the same thought. I thought, oh, so Batman's going to be remaining dead. But beginning of book 7, Batman is clawing his way out of the ground, and Superman comes back because he heard Batman's heart start to beat.
Yeah, and
And while they're there
fantastic.
talking, go ahead. Sorry.
No, my point was it was just a fantastic way to start the next book. They didn't let it linger. They just kind of he let you know right away, and that way you could kind of have Batman added to the story because really, at the end of the day, Joker really is Batman's enemy,
Right, and
and he
that's
has to be
actually a
important.
fantastic point because this is book 7. There's only 9 of these, and um, more Batman is good.
Yeah, and with uh with the way the Joker is, you once you know that the Joker's killing Batman every day, then bringing him back to life and killing him and bringing him back to life, it kind of lets you know that throughout this whole thing, even though it's been a Superman story, the Joker still hasn't forgot about Batman.
Yeah, right, which is something we're going to talk about a little later down the road. That I didn't pick up on until till the end. But so Batman and Superman are kind of discussing what's going on, and a horde of zombie Jokers starts attacking Batman and Superman, and Batman's kind of like broken here.
Yeah,
He's
this
not
was
really putting in much of an effort to fend off the zombies, and it's kind of bleak.
yeah, it's probably the worst I can remember ever seeing Batman in. It's like he had no fight, no life into him at all. It's like the
So
Joker had just completely obliterated what Batman was.
so I'm sitting here looking at my shelf, and I'm gonna say it's the worst that Batman out of everything I've read has been. The other ones that are in contention is maybe the beginning of No Man's Land, um, and maybe Venom, Batman Venom. There's two other ones that I can think of that are Batman gets pretty down, but I'm gonna say this one's probably the worst. Yeah,
Yeah, and just the way it all comes to a head, it just lets you know how badly this affected him.
right. And then um, the turning the tide against these armies of zombie Jokers is when Superman's actually able to kind of pick Batman up, and Batman starts to have a little bit of faith that they can do it.
Yeah, and it builds him back up a little bit. It builds him back up to a usable level, which was nice.
Right. So then Batman and the Superman, Superboy, and Supergirl are able to gain entrance to Joker's mind, but then they're betrayed by Lois Lane.
Yeah, Lois Lane. Well, she goes with Steel to do a frontal assault on Hacienda, and once they get in, she pulls the old double cross, and she wants the power. She's truly a Lex Luthor type character in Lois Lane's body. And at this point, the Joker's just continuously shooting Lex Luthor in the head, so Lois might as well take the mantle. But
Yeah.
yeah, and after that little double cross, Joker takes the other four, Superboy, Supergirl, Steel, and Superman, and turns them into animals.
Yep, they are the super pets.
Yes, that basically, yeah.
Um, I you kind of saw the Lois betrayal thing coming.
It was her character. It wasn't a huge surprise, that one.
And it was again well placed because it was the only thing that confirmed that this is not the Lois Lane that we know.
Yeah, and even though she's been showing these little bits of memory from the old world, she still very much is a Lex Luthor-esque type character in this, and she overcomes her little bits of, I guess, memory of the past and still manages to do what Lex Luthor would do.
Right. And I was totally convinced, and even still after this, I was slightly convinced that it would be Lois's regaining of the memory and like the love that her and Clark have. I figured that's what would end up breaking the Joker's control. I was even after she committed the oh boy, words, betrayal.
Good thing you're
Even
not
after
a
she committed
podcaster.
the yeah, yeah. Um, even after she committed the betrayal, I was still like, okay, well, this is going to turn around somehow. Like, that's not how it's a Superman story. Like, it's always Lois. Lois is almost always the answer.
Yeah, and I thought the same thing too, that Superman would break and then Lois would be there and be like, I remember now. And then Superman would be like, I remember too. And then everything would work out. But that was not
Right.
the case.
This issue as a whole is so fast paced, and the sceneries and backgrounds and places and them being turned into super pets, like everything changes page to page. And it really does a such a great job at portraying the madness that is Joker. Because you got
Yeah.
to remember, you're in his world, in his mind.
Yeah. And he controls everything, whether you live, whether you die. And just, they did a really good job making it crazy enough to respect the Joker and who he is.
And it carries over into issue 8, where it's Joker finding a few ways to torture Superman, even using his greatest fear against him, which is his own strength, where he's kind of they're actually sitting in a movie theater watching this happen on a big screen, and Superman thinks that it was just a bad dream, and he's going around to his friends and he's like hugging them, and when he's hugging them he's killing them, and it's Superman's greatest fear, and this isn't the only book that has that being his worst nightmare.
Yeah. And that it's kind of why I like Superman. He's built around morality as opposed to strength. It's what if you are a god and you can't, just flaunt your god powers all the time because he's more complex than I think people let on, especially if you watch like the movies and all that kind of stuff, because there's some really good writing with Superman where he doesn't do anything with his powers. It's just dialogue based, and this kind of showcases who Superman really is through these little I guess scenes of him, interacting with his friends and then eventually killing them all the time. And that's Joker's trying to prove the point is that he's so strong that he will just kill everybody around him that he loves.
Yeah, and that you bring up a great point, because I was one of those people. I was so disinterested in Superman because I was like, well, it's boring. Why doesn't he just like punch everyone really hard and take care of it? And like you said, it's much more deep and complex than that, because he's trying to stand for something. Even though I have all this power, I don't use it to make the world a better place. I my first Superman comic was The Death of Superman, and then I finished that run before I started to read other ones. But another good example of that is Last Son of Krypton. I can't wait to get into that for the show either. But Superman is a great character, and this book in itself is does such a great job at solidifying who he is. And really, if you never read a Superman book, this one would be a little more difficult to jump into because you won't know some of the characters in it. But it is a great story of who is Superman, even among all the madness.
Yeah, and you got all the super kids and the super other people and stuff like that, and but through all of what we on book 8 right now, through all 8 books, there's no
Hmm.
situation where Superman could just punch his way through, but there is moments where he gets angry and he shows that he has the power just to kind of, wipe everything out that he's angry at.
Yeah, right.
So it's
Um,
really a battle with writing Superman to make him an interesting character with moralities and what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong, versus just making a muscle guy who can punch his way through every wall in the world and fight any enemy without, any restraint.
yeah, right. And um, to that point, Superman like kind of beats all these torturing, and he doesn't break the way Joker wants him to break. So Joker turns to kind of torture Batman more to figure out how to break Superman, and Batman kind of has the same thought process that I did. He pretty willingly reveals to Joker that Superman's weak point is Lois Lane.
Yeah, and this shows again Batman's intelligence. He knows what's going to happen.
So Superman ends up killing Lois, and instead of it breaking him, it breaks the cycle and actually inspires the old, well, the real JLA to get involved. Um, and then it kind of becomes what you think is going to be more of a fair fight.
Yeah, and this kind of like because he ends up killing Lois when she's brought into this little movie that the Joker's making, and it's that moment that Superman starts rediscovering himself, and I really like that part of the comic.
Yeah, again, it's one of those great moments that it really solidifies who Superman is. He and who he is through his own fears, which is worth pointing out because again, this is a guy who is basically a god among men, and he has fears.
Yeah, and again, the complexity of Superman is a lot deeper than you'd see in a lot of movies, like the original Superman with Christopher Reeves. There, they don't really
Well,
get
yeah,
into the complexity of who Superman is. It's an action movie,
yeah, right,
but
right.
these comics they really dive into it. And there's one particular comic panel, and I think I posted it in your Discord. It's just basically Superman floating at the edge of a building where a young kid is threatening to jump off, and the whole time Superman could just take that kid and bring him down to the ground, but he sits there and he talks the kid through not jumping. And that's kind of where I really learned who Superman was, when he was written well.
Oh yeah, yeah. I actually remember that very well. That it's such a cool panel of because he's Superman. Why doesn't he just pick the kid up and fly him down? But instead, the kid says, "Don't come near me," and Superman and they wait a long time. It's not a short duration. Like they wait all day and all night and into the next day, and they talk, and he gives the person their space and lets them come to terms with whatever they're dealing with on their
Yeah.
not on their own, but on their own terms, basically.
Yeah, and it's it's a fantastic little story.
Um, that's that story. This is this story.
Yeah.
Issue 9 is our big final, and it starts out kind of the complete opposite way I thought it would. After the JLA is like all gung ho, the title page is all of the JLA dead.
Yeah, and Joker just wiped them right out without even trying.
So like you kind of expect this really big, battle between the original JLA and Joker's JLA, but that's not what we get at all. This issue starts with all of them dead, and it is just Superman and the Joker and the Joker League, who has actually turned on Superman because I don't think we even talked about it yet. Um, Joker gave Mixel to the Riddler for safekeeping, and Mixel's been working on him to kind of turn everyone against the Joker.
Yeah, and that's the only thing he can do is the Joker. Once he found him, trapped him in a little ball, and Mixoplex has no powers right now to do anything except talk.
He's pretty good at that, though.
Oh yeah, fantastic.
um, So it's in favor of making this a Joker centric climactic battle. They got rid of all of the JLA members. I was disappointed because who doesn't want to see half fish, half man duking it out with whatever, or Marvin Martian.
Or plastic credit card man.
Yeah, plastic credit card man. Oh, that one's so dumb. I forget it exists.
It kind of fits his character though.
A little bit, yeah, yep. Um, but this actually kind of really starts out as a focus on Batman's torture and Joker's plan to end it all, and then like we said before, Lois's death is what kind of springs Superman into breaking that trend. But
Yeah,
that kind of turns out to be a little bit useless, which is a complete and total shock to me because, like we already talked about, I thought that that's what would um, uh, be the turning point.
yeah, and I'm not sad that it wasn't. I mean, same problem, same solution every story arc. It was good that they kind of went in a different direction with this one.
And I actually can't agree more. And really, remembering that this is Joker's world inside of Joker's head, why would that make sense?
Yeah, and I mean, it's already starting to fall apart a little bit. I mean, by this point, Superman is back in his red, yellow, and blue uh, outfit. The black one is gone.
Oh
Um,
yeah, well, I don't even think we mentioned that before. For the majority of this, he was in his black suit
yeah,
and cape.
black and silver emblem. But he and Batman, they lose to the Joker again, right quick, like right at the beginning of the comic. So not only is the entire JLA done and gone, but Batman and Superman are back pinned up against a wall again. And this is kind of where it shows Batman's level of brokenness is because Batman's suggestion to Superman is to kill the Joker at this point.
Oh yeah, yep. I kind of had forgotten about that actually.
Yeah,
Batman is so distraught and defeated that he is willing to break his one rule.
and it's a great way to write Batman in this context of this story because the Joker is so obsessed with Batman and killing him that, or it's not killing Batman that the Joker's obsessed with, it's breaking him. And now that Joker has basically the power of everything, he finally found a way to break Batman.
By torturing him night after night
Oh,
after night
torturing him,
after.
killing him, just time after time. Like there's no nothing in the books that actually tells you how long this has been going on. It just simply states that every night this happens. So it could be 100 years, it could be 1,000 years, or it could have been 2 weeks for all we know.
Right, and I'm quiet there because I was picking up the book because I wanted to get this right. Batman and Superman are strung up on a wall, and Batman's mouth is kind of like non-existent, kind of shown sewn shut almost. And he is clicking to use Morse code to tell Superman what he needs to do.
Yeah,
And Batman Morse codes that he wants Superman to kill Joker, and then a flock of vultures come in and eat and kill him.
and torturally, well, not torturally, painfully kill him.
Yeah, and uh, they really focus on Superman's horror of all of it, and it's Superman. He has like the super hearing, and like it's basically an overstimulant of his senses. And while this is going on, we are seeing Mixel try and persuade uh, the Riddler into turning against Joker, as well as Lex Luthor doing the same with Lois Lane, and Joker is explaining to Harley what his final plan is, and he
This
even
part
kind
was
of What's that?
Sorry, this part was kind of funny where Joker's explaining to Harley because Harley just asked for like a little neighborhood or a little block, to
Yep.
call her
Yep.
own, and Joker ends up, killing her, making her a consolation in the stars.
Yep. Um, and again, how fitting is that for Joker to give her a constellation prize? On
But
very
I'm
intended.
yeah, and it's um it's indicative of the Joker's relationship with Harley, the abuse that he puts her through, and the hopeless love that she has for him. It's very typical Joker Harley relationship.
Right. So they have that moment of Mixel is talking to Enigma. Superman is strung up and can't get out because he is in like lead line cuffs, and the whole magic thing he's weak to. And then Spectre kind of shows up, I believe, right? Does
Yeah,
Spectre? Yeah, yep. Yep, he kind of shows up to help persuade the JLA to turn against Joker, and um, Lex Luthor is talking to Lois to kind of persuade her in the other direction, and she ends up going to visit Superman in his entrapment, and she ends up um, saying that basically, like you said, she's Lex Luthor. She does not believe in him. She thinks very little of him, and she is there because she is asking him to make her believe. Um, and before they get a chance, Joker is supersized Joker with his JLA members kind of strung across his belt, and he is just destroying everything.
yeah, and it's the classic ha ha destroying everything Joker.
Yeah.
His obsession with winning right now is kind of consuming him. Then Superman just kind of blows his mind.
Yeah. After Joker picks up Lois Lane and squeezes her too hard again, killing her, and that's when Superman flies basically through Joker's foot all the way up through the top of his brain, dropping Lois. And as she is dying, she gets her memories back and turns back into Lois Lane out of like the Empress garb that she has been in the last couple of issues.
And she's back to her original reporter self, guy who loves Big Blue and all that stuff.
Right, which again is another way for them to kind of break the cycle. And Joker, even he hits Superman. He's not giant anymore. He hits Superman with a rubber chicken, classic, and he actually says that he felt that. So kind of a sign that he's losing a little bit of his powers. Superman wearing his red and blue costume, Lois Lane turning back into herself, and then Joker actually being injured.
Yeah, and when he gets hit with the rubber chicken, Joker sends him flying straight across like the universe or very far away distance in space, and he runs into Mistoplex, who kind of stops him. And then they have kind of a heartfelt conversation, which kind of wraps up how this, well, not wraps up, sorry, but leads into how the story's going to wrap up.
Right. Basically, Superman is told, "You're not thinking." That Joker could end this with a thought. Why is he keeping him around?
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought, but yeah, it's a very smart way to do it. Again, Superman's tried the punching, it's not working. So how is he going to beat the Joker? And Mistoplex gives him the hint that's going to lead into the end.
And the good of place of any for us to lead into the end. Uh, It's basically Joker is Superman plays Joker's own mind against him. He kind of calls his bluff on destroying everything because if Joker destroys everything, that would mean he would be destroying Batman.
And that's something that famously the Joker just can't do because he has to break Batman.
And break him over and over and over again. And after uh, the realization that Joker can't destroy everything because it would, in fact, destroy Batman, he kind of rapidly loses all of his powers.
And not that, every time he tries to forget about Batman to erase him, Batman shows up again and again and again and gets bigger and it starts encompassing Joker's mind and it's everything all of a sudden is about Batman. So it's the one thing Joker can't get rid of because Batman and the Joker can't exist without each other. And that's kind of what I got from what this is saying.
Oh, sure, sure, yeah, and I mean, that's kind of their whole dynamic, right? That's the, Batman created Joker, and the Joker exists because of Batman.
Yeah, and it's a fantastic dynamic.
Um, and then just kind of almost as quickly as it started, it's over. Joker is overwhelmed with the thought of Batman actually kind of takes shape of the universe, if that makes sense. Like the universe is running through Batman, and Mixelplix is able to seize the opportunity to regain his powers. And the comic kind of fast forwards them putting everything back together like it was. And at the very end, we get Superman with Mixel and Spectre. They're having a conversation about how everything got back together. Superman is scolding Mixel, and he voluntarily says his name backwards and leaves. And then they turn to Batman, which is before we started recording, kind of the point that you and I spent the most time talking about, because this end of the comic is huge.
Yeah, and we interpreted it a little bit differently, which I found quite interesting.
Yeah, so um Batman is kind of hunched over on a cliff, and he's done. He's not the Batman everyone knows him to be. He is so mentally beaten and broken. He just he doesn't want to move. Like he's in such deep depression, and uh, rightfully so. I mean, he got killed over and over again in the worst ways imaginable. And Superman is like really shook because it's Batman. He has the strongest he has the strongest will out of anyone. He is Superman being Superman, Batman someone that he looks up to with his resolve. And this is something that Batman can't resolve on his own.
Yeah, and it talks about Batman closing his eyes and he sees it over and over again, this constant torture and death that the Joker inflicted upon him. And like I've been saying, it broke Batman's very solid mind and even brought him to the point of breaking his one rule of no killing. So at this point, there's no coming back for Batman. He can't forget what has happened to him.
And then Superman kind of, again, we had talked about him getting angry. He kind of takes his rage out on Spectre, who tells Superman the only way that he can take away those kind of memories is if someone is willing to take them from him and share the weight of the burden. And of course, I actually have the book sitting here with the panel open on my lap, and it says Superman's dialogue in response to Spectre saying, "Someone who understands the gravity of stealing a man's memories, his pain." Superman says, "I know what you'd say if you were listening, Bruce, but it can't end like this, not for you, especially not because of him," referring to the Joker. Um, Superman again says, "Damn your pain, Bruce. We need you too much. I need you. I'm sorry. Do it." And then Spectre, as he's vanishing, says, "Done. Mercy on both your souls, Kal-El. Mercy." So you interpreted it as
Superman took Bruce's memories and he carries the full weight of it. And that's what I got from that last line you said when the Spectre says, "Done, mercy on both your souls, Kal-El, mercy," because mercy on Batman's soul for taking the memories away, and mercy on Superman's soul for having to bear that weight just so he can keep Batman and his best friend, functioning as a normal person. Well, normal for
okay.
Batman.
And that's exactly what I thought. So then we get like a page where Superman goes to the Daily Planet and grabs Lois and flies her up to the sky, and they're having a conversation, and no one remembers what happened beforehand other than Superman and Batman. Um, like Lois has no idea what's going on, and then it goes back to Batman and Superman going inside of, it is not Arkham. I don't remember the prison or if they even mention it.
I don't think they
Um,
mention it.
no, it is not
Just
here.
some slab in New York.
Yep, it says slab in New York. Anyway, the very very last page, Joker is saying Emperor Joker backwards, and the very very last panel is a close up of his eye, and Spectre is in Joker's eye. So after seeing that, I thought that they took Batman's pain and put it in Joker. And when Spectre says, "Done, mercy on both your souls, Kal-El, mercy," I took it as mercy on Superman's soul because he chose to give that burden to someone else.
But and this is where I was kind of I was reading along with you like a good kindergartner here, and there's the one line the Spectre's talking, and he says, "I cannot." He has kissed death countless times. Blah 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 blah. Then he goes, "And that I cannot do unless someone is willing to carry them in his stead. Someone who understands the gravity of stealing a man's memories, his pain." So you're taking this interpretation is the Joker understands Batman's pain, where I'm taking it as Superman understands Batman's pain.
I
So
mean, and
that's
again, I
where,
can see it either way,
yeah,
but
and it's kind of I guess it's left up to interpretation of the reader here because I can't remember a situation where it's explained.
and as far as I know, it's not. And like, I mean, why wouldn't Joker know his pain? He's the one who inflicted it on him.
But would the Joker care? But you're right. And like the more we talk, the more I can see your side of story or your side of the conclusion here. But I still
And
believe this is the burden Superman's bearing because again, it's a Superman comic. So I feel like this is the conclusion where Superman leaves by losing something.
and the fact that it is a Superman comic makes me think that you're probably right. Um, but again, that's just it's another major win for this comic in general is that two people can read this and actually see the ending two different ways. And sitting here talking about it, we come to a consensus of it could go either way.
Yeah, and it's just it makes very much sense the way you've explained it, and in my mind, the way I see it makes a lot of sense as well. And it's just it can be no other way than it was left up to the reader to kind of interpret where this was or how this concluded or where those memories went.
And again, like I really do love any kind of media that leaves open ended at the end of a story. The movie Inception comes to my mind. I remember the first time I watched the end of that. Oh, and Shutter Island, where you didn't really know what the end was. I love those kind of endings. Everything is basically resolved except for one big question, and this one being is Superman the one that's bearing the weight, or is it Joker? And I'm okay not knowing it. To wrap up our little discussion here. It is a great Superman story, and for my first read through, I was absolutely engulfed in this story.
Yeah, and like I said, it's pretty much one of my favorite story arcs of the Superman universe, and out of all the comics I have. And it wasn't long after this that I kind of fell off the comic book collecting thing because I went and did something stupid by joining the military, and after I traveled around, I went to a place where, believe it or not, there was no comic book store. So I couldn't keep up the habit. And I think it was not until we started talking that I started going back to comic book stores and I started collecting again. So some 20 years later. Oh,
Which makes me feel really good. That's what I'm here to do.
oh yeah.
Create bad habits in people.
Yeah. So
That
can I send you the bill?
no, I do not understand your pain and suffering, and I am not willing to accept that in your steadfast.
Why am I even doing this anyways?
Yeah. Um, so I've actually, when I started looking at or comics in general and looking at Superman comics, and I was going through like the list of like, you know, where to start or must reads, and I never once seen this story. For those of you that are wondering, we started off calling this Superman Arkham, but that was to hide the big reveal. It actually, if you're going out and buying the trade, it is Superman Emperor Joker is the name of the trade.
Which is kind of
But this
unfortunate.
yeah, I wish it would have been Superman Arkham. That way it could have hit it for me because you told me what the name of it was. And then after seeing Mixel in the first issue, I was like, oh, okay, well, now I kind of know what's going on. But this, I do not remember seeing this on any list I ever looked at. And I think that is a crime. This book needs to be talked about more.
Yeah, and I don't think this book was making any waves when it came out either. I think it was just because it's part of the standard Superman rotation. It just kind of fell into the normal. Well, it's just another arc of the Superman story.
Yeah, right, right. And aside from that, I I would love an animated movie of this.
Oh, that'd
Like
be
let DC
crazy.
do, wouldn't it?
I don't think they have enough colors in the box of crayons to write this one.
Oh, I there are some that would just like some comic adaptations that wouldn't do well. I think this one would do very well because of that, because of how wild it is.
I
And
think,
it would be another way to get more people to actually witness this story.
yeah, and I think Joker stories make really good DC animated movies.
Right. Yeah. Of course they do. It's the Joker.
Yeah, and I know Mark Hamill retired, but I would love to see him back in this role.
I'm I I'm so glad that he retired the way he did. I think it was, poetic justice, but that's a conversation for another time.
It is.
Um and the other thing that I really really liked about this story was I didn't know how they were going to turn the tides against Joker, and I was really guessing to the end because there's a point where you think that maybe it's Lex Luthor that's going to do it, and then you think maybe it's Lois, or maybe Harley is going to turn on Joker because he kind of tossed her aside and made Lois the Empress. And then, of course, well, Batman's there. So is Batman going to do it? And he did in a way, but really Joker did it to himself, which is the perfect way to end this book.
Yeah, and it just I like how they kind of kept feeding you little misdirections about how it's going to turn out. So you kept thinking, like you said, it's well, obviously Lois is going to do something that makes Superman figure this out, or Lex Luthor, the genius, is going to do it, or the Justice League is going to get into the battle, and all of a sudden it's Justice League battle, and it just every time you kind of had a inkling of what was going on, the book just kind of threw another curveball at you right up until the end.
Yep. And speaking of the end, we've been doing this for a while now. I think it is time to get to our end. And I before I ask you, I want to, again, thank you for coming on and doing this with me and working with me through all the technical difficulties we had through this, and we had a lot of them.
10 times. Not that I'm counting.
I actually wasn't counting. Were you legitimately counting?
No, I just looked at our messages on Discord, and there's 10 links to start this.
My average is 3. I think the other ones that I've done, I've had 3 episodes. So again, thank you so much for being on here. Thank you for all of the support you've given me and all the help that you've given me, and thank you for recommending such a good comic.
Thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun, and uh, I'd love to do it again sometime if I can find another comic book. But I hope I hit the or set the bar really high for the next comic I suggest.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure we're gonna do this again. And just so I get it out here on the air, this is going to be our last normal episode in August, and then that in 2 weeks we're going to be doing a unscripted and unbuckled. In September, I'm going weekly, and I am uh, opening up a Patreon in September. There's going to be I'm sure I'm going to mention that in the intro and all that stuff. I just wanted to throw a reminder out here. Our Unbuckled and Unscripted is going to be a review of the 90s cartoon Spider-Man, the animated series, with a very special guest, Captain Alcatraz. And I look forward to everything that's coming down the line. And again, a lot of the credit goes to the support that I've gotten through everyone, like Captain N here. And Captain N, the way we end this show is with the biggest question: is this a what are you doing, a get on it, a pick it up, or a pass on it?
Oh, I'm gonna go with get on it. There's going to be better stories out there, so I don't want to give it the 100%, but is definitely a book or a series you need to pick up and read if you haven't read it all yet, especially if you're a Superman and a Joker fan.
I really had to think about this. It is one of my favorite Superman stories that I have and that have read. So I wanted to say, "What are you doing?" But in all fairness, I haven't read that many. So I am going to agree with you with the asterisk of this is one of my favorite, if not my favorite, Superman story now. So that is going to do it for us. This is Captain N and Unbuckled Cape saying, "Get on it." And until next time, guys, get out there and save the world, you bunch of heroes.